Hi, my name is Fia Dennis, and I have started a digital media company called Phace. And today we're going to be talking about the NRA as well as gun rights based on the recent events that happened at Parkland and how that has brought those topics under fire, and a lot of people are now beginning to question them. First off, before we start, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming. And if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, go ahead.
Hi, I'm William Brown from I Enjoy Media. I build apps.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I'm a student at NYU.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm a musician.
My name is Tajoli. I work in content partnerships at Twitter.
Hey, my name is Devin, and I'm a sales rep.
My name is Jillian. I'm a writer.
Leonard Jones, a student at St. John's University.
I'm Serafina. I do freelance styling.
So I know I have my own personal opinion, but this is a very debated topic throughout the country within the past year based on the mass shootings and the shootings at schools. So if anyone feels that they want to say something, go ahead and start.
Cool. So the first question is, what do we all think about the ties between the NRA and the government?
So I think the most blatant connection is that government officials take money from the NRA. And I think that kind of is a con because it kind of pushes an agenda.
I would definitely agree. I mean, the NRA is one of the biggest lobbyist groups in the country, right? When you look at different industries, whether it be pharmaceutical industry, the gun rights, like every industry has a group of lobbyists, right? So for guns rights, the NRA is the biggest, right? Even going back to Ronald Reagan, which was like the first person the NRA ever endorsed as a president. And like he was one of the most conservative presidents ever. So like they always have had like some ties within our government pushing their specific agenda, but I kind of feel like they only push their agenda for like certain people, right?
To piggyback off of that, I was reading an article and they actually rank certain politicians based on their views of gun control on like an A through F scale. So it's sort of like they're kind of controlling like politicians based upon and giving them funding based on how they view gun control.
Yeah, like, I don't know if you saw that. I think there was something on CNN where they had a town hall debate, and Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, and one of the kids was like going in on like how much the NRA was like donating to his campaign. Yeah. They asked him a question like, "Will you not take money from the NRA?" And he couldn't say anything. He just was like, "Well, I'm going to look into all the aspects of donations." But he went around the question. So it's like very much tied within the government. I do think it's like what you said. I think it's a problem with the agenda that they're pushing.
Okay, I also think that I have a problem with the NRA basically bribing the US government, but my problem doesn't only lie there. I also have a problem with the fact that they want the specific model of a person to fit their brand, right? Yeah. So the person has to be this conservative right-wing person who looks the part, someone who they consider to be a law-abiding citizen, right? But then, for instance, we could take it to Philando Castile, where he had a gun in his car, which he had a permit for, which he was legally allowed to carry, told the police this beforehand, and he still ended up getting shot. So it has to do with, for me, it has to do with the lines that we're willing to draw in terms of how we view people, right? Because people view people based on the way that they look, and Philando Castile does not look like anybody I've ever seen the NRA openly support.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder, like, if he was of a different race, would the NRA have been spoken up, right? I think the first thing that they came out with was, we'll wait for the facts to come out. Like, that was like BS, right? It's like, they know what happened. We all know what happened. The video was there, right? So it makes it clear.
It's sort of a North versus South thing too, like with respect to that, being played out. Because down south, open carry laws are anywhere you go, and then up north here, carry and conceal, and now they're checking and they're treating you a lot different knowing that you have a gun.
Yeah.
So for me, personally, I've never seen a gun in my entire life that was not on a police officer. So when I saw that people were able to buy guns within 15 minutes, people who are my age, 17, 18, are able to go and buy guns without background checks with less than 20 minutes. I thought that it was absolutely insane.
What's crazy about that is they're classifying it as like use of sport. So they're saying that you can go hunting and you can use guns for sport at these young ages, and they're approving these young kids without even having a psych evaluation because the human mind doesn't even truly develop until you're over your 20s. So how are they getting these firearms in their possession, or even war firearms, assault firearms that's able to use in these states, which I think is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. So like when like I would go to a store we call Kroger. I know some of you guys heard of Kroger, but
I'm from Akron.
no, from Akron. Okay, cool. So yeah, I remember growing up in Columbus, and like in the checkout in Kroger, like you buy candy, whatever you want as a kid, and then like right behind you, a guy has like a rifle, right, or a handgun, right. And this is at Walmart, this is at Meijer, Kroger. A lot of those stores in the Midwest, it's like a culture, right. So like depending on where you grow up and what you see, sometimes like can definitely change your view and change your experience of like how you interact with guns, so.
And then, like, related to buying guns in department stores, there was actually a man, I think either last year or the year before, who was in a Walmart looking to buy a gun with a permit. So he was like testing out guns, holding different guns, a black man, and someone in the Walmart saw him with a gun. It was a BB gun. Yeah, saw him with the gun, called the police, and said there's a suspicious man holding a rifle, waving it around, threatening to kill somebody. And so the police ran in and just automatically shot him without even looking to see what he was holding, what he was doing, or if he even had shot anyone. And obviously, that was not his intent. He was looking to buy a gun, so he died.
It didn't correlate with what they said.
Yeah.
You know what?
Waving it, she walked right past the aisle and just like kept moving. Like, so she had seen him for like 0.3 seconds. No way to tell.
What state was that in?
I can't recall. I don't.
That's my first time hearing about that.
Which in and of itself is very scary that we're not hearing these things on mainstream, and I think that goes back to the issue of race, because you don't see these stories. You see a black guy went and had a gun, and there's no context to it.
I think the media does manipulate a lot of the stories that are being portrayed to us, and it's up to us to really dig deep and do our research to get these full stories, to bring them to the limelight, just so we're exposed and others are exposed to the criteria and what exactly is going on with these related cases.
Yeah, it's like each channel has like its own agenda, right? Fox News very much far right conservative, CNN too very much liberal, right? So like you got to take everything at face value and like get the facts for yourself, because they're all going to portray it in different ways. If you just like even go online or just watch TV, like the headlines are going to be completely different on two different channels. So like you just really got to get the information for yourself and like make your own decisions.
And I think that's the biggest problem, because I have family in Florida and I visited them like of June last year, and I was sitting in the hotel room and they had Fox News on, and it was just a complete different side of the media that I had never seen before, because I've always lived in the Northeast. And it was just completely bashing, like making liberals look like psychopaths, and there was a video of people hitting a piñata of Trump. And I feel like if they're going to show people in the South and people in Florida that that's what us liberals are like, then it's a very skewed image.
It's also very interesting to take that perspective and maybe see, is what we think of conservatives, is that also kind of an extremist point of view? And then also, as we know, gun rights are permitted by the Second Amendment. So do you guys still feel like the Second Amendment is something that's valid in modern day society?
Not at all. So the Second Amendment, like when it was put in place because we were still kind of fighting with the British. So we're not fighting with the British anymore. There's no reason for us to have guns in our home to protect us. We have a military now. We have an army to do that for us. I think that the laws need to change with the times.
I think they do need to be reevaluated and fixed, because if you look at another socialist economy, say England, where police officers can't even carry firearms, look how much safer a country is. Look how much mass shootings there is. America is really the only country where you see mass shootings within a school environment, within an educational institution. And to me, that is crazy.
I think that has to do with the fact that the government is too scared to make harsh changes on the gun rights laws because of the people that support them. So for instance, gun rights should have been changed before Columbine, right? But they were not. And then Sandy Hook happened, and then it just never stops happening. Even when little kids die, we can't change it because we're so tied to the money that we get from the NRA.
Yeah, but all right. So I think we have two conversations going on, right? It's like, one, should we get rid of the Second Amendment? I don't think we should. However, I do think we should make gun laws stricter, right? So like what the conservative people are saying, you're trying to take away our guns. Like no, like nobody's trying to take away the right to have a gun. You can have the right to have a gun, but I think the issue is more so like who's having the gun, how easy is it for you to get the gun, and what are you doing with the gun, and what type of gun is it, right? So do I believe we should get rid of the Second Amendment? No, but at the same time, I don't think an 18-year-old kid should be able to buy an AR-15.
Exactly.
I just
So
don't
it's like-
understand, the logistics behind someone needing an AR-15
There's
in
no
their
need.
Well,
home.
there's no reason, but conservatives argue like the slippery slope argument that
Once
if
you start
you
taking
take
away.
if you take one thing away, then no one can even carry a handgun or anything.
that's-
So
But they can't prove that.
So-
I definitely
But
agree with
that's
this point. I
illogical.
think that I don't think it's so blatant that you should take away the Second Amendment because there's so many cases, especially in Philando Castile's. In that instance, me just in general, even as a black man from DC, cops can sometimes be a little abrasive. Sometimes they can be a little hasty, So when it comes to like the protection of yourself, I don't think it's necessary. Like I agree with what you're saying. The time in which the Second Amendment applied, we were at war with Britain. We wanted to make sure that we could protect our families and things like that. But I still think as a black man today, you don't know. Let's say per se, the Parkland shooting that somebody was in the school who was licensed to have a gun. Maybe they could have impacted the situation and been a lot faster than the first responders who made it to, the location. So I think it's very dangerous to say we should remove the Second Amendment. It has no place in modern day society, you know what I mean? Because there's so many things that happen in the world, especially in America, as far as gun violence. And to say that we should just remove it,
Yeah, I definitely don't argue to get rid of it. Like I that's not my point. I definitely think that we should keep it, but we need to moderate because there's no reason why there should be an AR-15 in regular civilian society. There's no need for it. There's no need for bump stocks. If he did not have an AR-15, he didn't have a semi-automatic rifle, he would not have been able to kill 17 people in that short amount of time. If he had a knife, he would have maybe gotten 2 people, which is still obviously a tragedy, but it's like 15 people less.
Yeah.
So how do we think that the Second Amendment should be adjusted or changed, like specifically?
Does
the
anyone
Second-
really think that they would actually be able to take out all the guns from America anyway in the first place?
So no.
It's not feasible.
There's about one gun per person.
And then think about all the people who buy guns illegally. There's a huge market of people that
So
buy
the
guns
fir-
illegally. How do we even battle that?
Sorry.
Because if you have everyone who's registered, okay, we could say maybe we could go to them and get those guns. But the people who own guns illegally,
So it basically trickles down. So for the people who pertain guns legally, in turn they could sell them to pawn shops or to private vendors, and then people who obtain guns illegally can buy those guns from them. So the people who buy guns legally, basically their guns can trickle down to the hands of like someone who's going to commit a crime. And as someone who, and for you, because I know that you own guns, so if you could tell me your perspective about owning them, how they make you feel, why you own them, just so that we can kind of get a different view on the whole situation.
well, owning guns, I guess you'd start with it's something that's always been in my family, like from my grandfather to his father. Well, they were all military men, cops, this and that, hunters. So a lot of times they always had guns around. As a kid, seeing guns was something I seen all the time. My grandpa would rather me see the gun, not be curious, and I want to go and look at it by myself or something like that. So a lot of times as a kid, I was around guns, I seen guns. But up until recently, I didn't own my own. Until I turned 21, like here in New York, you had to be 21 to own your own gun. And I really bought my first gun was a hunting rifle. So I bought it for hunting. When I go hunting, it doesn't come out other than that. But other guns I have, it kind of came down the line, just purchasing different guns and it kind of turns into like, oh, I just want to try this one, try that one. So it turns into like a hobby almost, But I think the most important thing about New York and other states is that you can't be 18 when you walk in the store. They check you, they run your background, they do all that, every necessary step. And if you want certain items, like you can't just walk in and buy whatever you want. You're gonna have to sit and be on a waiting list, like especially with like pistols and other things like that. That's the difference. Like in New York and other states, you can just walk in and buy a pistol, and no one will ever know you have a pistol on you. It's like it's just crazy. Like all you have to do is be a resident of that state, and you're able to own a pistol that you could walk into anywhere, and no one will ever know you have it on you. But back to what I was saying about just being around guns, I don't really know how some people would feel because, like I said, I was always around them. So like you said you've never seen a gun, never been around it. I know the first time I heard a gunshot, it was like the scariest thing of my life. Like once you actually are behind it and you shoot it, it also makes you gain a different respect for what you're holding in your hand. Like if I was like, all right, yeah, I'm ready to go shoot this, whatever, let's go shoot. Like I shot that gun and I was like, wow, this could really you realize the power that you're holding in your hand, and for some people, hopefully, they realize that power that they're holding in their hand, but others can't grasp that. So it's.
If you don't mind me asking, I just want to ask him a question, Devin. Would you feel like the process in which you went through to obtain your first weapon, would you feel like, or would you say that it was, I guess, not rigorous, but just kind of effective as far as like testing, like, you know?
It was, I would say it could be better, but it would just ask you, it's pretty much simple questions, and some things like, it's easy for someone to lie on, like, are you a resident of the state, or like, but you really need all your background, but if someone has a fake ID or something like that, it's something you could get around. But other than that, I think it's like, it's the people, if you've got someone who's doing it seriously and takes their job seriously, like if you go into like a certain respected place, they're gonna do everything they have to do because they're gonna fear that if they don't, they're gonna get in serious trouble.
Okay, and then can you also kind of explain, how do you feel it being necessary in your life? I know you talk about traveling with your business, so how does that affect how you feel towards guns and what you see?
That affected me traveling throughout the country and stuff, not even throughout the country, even here in New York, where it's almost impossible to get a gun. I know some store owners who had to get guns on the street in order to protect their business because they're unable to carry a gun in their city. But every kid or person who comes into their store is carrying a legal pistol. And what does a guy do when he's sitting here making money for his family and then kids come in the store with guns? And unfortunately, I know multiple people who were killed being robbed in the type of situation. So I think it's important for certain areas to be a little bit easier for business owners and stuff like that, and a little more stricter on the regular people who are walking around with these guns.
What do you think can be done specifically to lower the amount of occurrences that happen where somebody, because you mentioned earlier, a truck bombarding a door, people coming out with guns, robbing the entire store, etc.
And the crazy part about that stuff is that's mostly in the Midwest and those areas where it's a lot easier to go and get these guns. Yeah. So a lot of my guys who carry, I know a guy who unfortunately carries a machine gun behind his counter because he was robbed and someone had a machine gun. So he thought to himself, okay, well, someone's coming in here with one. It's a dumb thing to think, but like it's you know, when you see it, you get scared, and they hope to put that same fear back into someone who's coming in and trying to rob them. And the last thing they ever want to do is have to use that. But it's there just in case.
Examples like that is the reason why I think we should not get rid of the Second Amendment, right? Because there are neighborhoods and people that still need to have guns to protect themselves. But the problem is like the NRA and a lot of people that are really advocating for gun rights are people that would never be in those situations before, like ever. And it's interesting to see it because they're very passionate about protecting themselves, but they go home to their picket fence and they go to sleep with their nice family, and like they're fine. Like they'll never be in that situation, right? So it's interesting, like for me to figure out like why do they really advocate so much for gun rights when it's a situation they'll never be in, hopefully. But you know, it's a very interesting topic to me. So like that is an example, and I think I'm glad you said it and articulated it the way you did, because it's an example of why we still do need the Second Amendment, and why we just can't get rid of it, but we should actually just amend it for like the current times.
To your point, I think America, we're very big on rights. Like we're big on democracy, unlike other countries. And so, I agree with you 100% where it's, that some of the people who are lobbying for this, who are even funding the NRA as well, and in support of them, they're not really going to see that type of life or experience those type of happenings. Yeah. But for them, they're just seeing it as kind of what she was saying with the slippery slope. It's like, if you take that away, then it's like, what are you going to take away next? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the first thing people do when, you take a fish out of water.
So like that's actually a good point, like the slippery slope line. It's a little bit off, but like where I'm going to go is a little bit off, but there's this big conversation in the country around Confederate statues, right? So around the country, they're taking down Confederate statues of generals and soldiers that fought in the war in the South, right? And the conservative argument is like, well, if you take down the statue of Robert E. Lee and a lot of Confederate generals, what are you going to take down next? Like Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. So like they always have this idea that they're being attacked, right? And that they have this slippery slope, like, oh, if you take this, then everything else is going to fall, right? But that's not the message, right? Like we just want to have stricter gun laws. Like that's it. Like we're not trying to take away your whole life. It's not a slippery slope. Like we just need to focus on the task at hand, right? You know?
And I think that's very interesting because if you think about it, the people who are conservative from the South, whatever it may be, they've always been the people that have had the most amount of rights in this country.
Yeah,
So the one time that something that they believe in is being challenged, it's almost like it's the end of the world for them.
Yeah.
So also kind of going to that, what I was saying before, I also feel like there is around this whole Second Amendment and being able to protect yourselves and being able to have guns to protect your property or protect yourself in case the police or other help is not readily available. I find that to also be very flawed because we want to pick and choose what that could be, and we want to make it look like it's the best form, and it can only be conservative, right people who are law-abiding citizens trying to protect themselves with guns.
Yeah.
When you actually think about it, gangs are basically based off of the same premise. But every time you think of a gang, people want to, obviously gangs do not the greatest things, they do bad things, but people want to like point a finger and make gangs seem as if they're the worst possible thing in the world. Meanwhile, the NRA is basically just a large organization of a gang.
Yeah. I would just like to say, like, as far as regulations go, I think, like, to what you were saying, where they kind of want to play the victim roles. Like, if you take that away, then what are you going to take away next? I think what they need to realize, and those, when I say they, I mean those who support, the right to bear arms, which is the Second Amendment. It's not per se, as you were saying, that you want to remove that. It's just we want to find better regulations. So where would you guys think where would you think we should start as a country when it comes to regulations? Like, should it start, in the schools? Should it start, like, with public health? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where would you think that, that would be the best avenue to go?
I think background checks and just overall knowledge about guns and spreading knowledge about guns. I have an uncle who is a doctor in rural Atlanta, and he oftentimes can recount stories of people who come to the ER with gunshot wounds because they don't understand the magnitude of a bullet. They don't understand that when you shoot someone that they could die and it could lead to infection and stuff like that, because there's just not much education around what happens in those kinds of circumstances. Also, a lot of people who buy guns with intention to do harm, they either don't go through background checks or they can easily lie on the background checks. So I think background checks definitely need to be something that's revised. For instance, the state of California, it takes multiple days and multiple meetings with psychiatrists and other different forms of regulation in order to obtain a gun, and they probably have the strictest gun laws in the country. So I think that's something that needs to become more widespread, and I also think that maybe this is an issue that should not be a state by state government mandate, but actually a federal. So that way it's one uniform thing, and we can all kind of understand how maybe since you're in New York, maybe when you go somewhere else, your gun laws are jeopardized.
Yeah, it's completely different. So, like, for example, there's also other ways to get around gun laws. Like, if you have a pistol permit in one state, that automatically clears you for another state. So a lot of people will get a gun license in one state, like put a mailing address there, or like if they own a piece of property, like they would stay there for a little bit. And if you get it in one state, it makes it acceptable for another, and then it's kind of like a domino effect, and they're able to get it in multiple states. So that's another thing that people are able to do.
Specifically, so like your ammo clip has to be out the clip, but you can still own your gun.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different laws too that are also crazy. Like some people in certain states could have a 100-round clip, but here in New York you can only have like a 10-round clip.
Yeah.
And a lot of times here in New York, if you have like say a gun with an adjustable stock, like a AR-15 or anything like that, you're gonna have a gun that you're not able to take the magazine out of. So you're not going to be able to go into a school and shoot up the school unless you shot up a school with 10 bullets. Because what you're going to have to do after that is take the top part of the gun off, which consists of the barrel, and then from there you load it into the top instead of just being able to drop out a clip and then throw in another clip. So I think more states need to be on the same level with the laws and what we're allowed to have on guns and what kind of guns we're allowed to have.
Okay, so piggybacking off of that with school shootings and other mass shootings like we've seen in Vegas and Parkland, and Sandy Hook. How do you feel about like the status of school shootings? Do you feel like it's an act of terror? Do you think that it's something that needs to be, more strongly, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Like dealt with.
It's more strongly dealt with. Do you
Regulated,
think that
right.
government should have a higher say or a higher input on how we can stop these issues from happening, or the proper regulations that need to happen in order to end it?
Most definitely. Like this, like again, when you think about a lot of these shootings that take place, it's in a lot of areas where a kid who's in high school is able to go and purchase a weapon. When here in New York, you have to be 21, which I think should be everywhere, just like voting or anything else that you have to do, drinking in all the states, whatever. So the fact that kids who are still in high school are able to get guns, it just doesn't even make any sense for that. And kids who can't vote are able to buy a gun.
Yeah,
And
that makes no sense.
It-
I mean, you can drink at 21, but you can buy like an AR-15
Exactly.
and shoot up a school. It's
It,
so backwards. It's very backwards.
yeah, there's something that doesn't really connect in like things like that. And then again, going back to saying like the things that they're able to have in these certain states, like the 30-round magazines and up from there, and the guns that are you're able to drop the magazine and reload it in 2 seconds flat. Like, we need to be on the same page throughout the states with the laws on the regulations of the weapons, not just the laws about guns in general, but the regulations per weapon you have. Like, I could go into a store and I could buy a 50 caliber rifle if I want to, and like you could shoot a plane out of the sky with that gun. Like, there's really no reason to own a 50 caliber rifle, but you could walk into a store and buy one in a day.